That's really what I'm going for, yes. Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome to our 6th online wine tasting. My name is Kyle with Andrew Hilton. We're going to be discussing 4 wines tonight, and feel free to hit us up in the comments with questions, commentary, whatever you'd like to know. We have got Devin Smith, the sommelier in-house, running the comment section by text, and I will also be handling things. We, of course, some of you took advantage of the beautiful charcuterie plate provided by Umami Shop, which is always a $50 add-on for any of our wine tastings here. It's a variety of crackers and cheeses and pickles and grapes and meats, and it's been a lot of fun. They gave me one free to start, so that was a lot of fun. I ate the heck out of that. So as we get into Germany, talking about German wine has become something of a bit of a meme around the store, where I am just the king of Germany and Devin kind of knows about everything else. That's saying too much. I mean, we both have a pretty deep wine background, but Germany's just my jam. If you come in the store, it's like, hey, what would you recommend in a wine? odds are pretty good I'm going to recommend something German just because that's who I am on the inside. So we're going to talk about 4 different wines. 2 of them will be Riesling, which is very much my thing, and 2 of them will be members of the Pinot family, or really the Pinot grape. We'll talk about why that's important in a minute. When we talk about Germany, we talk about a fairly large region. We have the German part of Alsace called Pfalz in the extreme west, all the way over to Franken in the extreme east. It's got a ton of different types of soils, tons of different types of topography. You have the big, broad, rolling plains of Baden and Franken, to the tight, squiggly, narrow little river valleys of the Mosel, to the big kind of stone steep amphitheater with the Rhine River at the bottom of the Rheingau. You have so many different types of soils that we really can't capture all of Germany in one tasting. That doesn't mean we're not going to try, though. So we're going to crack right into our first wine, because watching the comments, a lot of people have already cracked into the first wine, so why don't we all crack into the first wine? This is a wine with a fun story. A couple of summers ago, I got married to my wife, Christy, who occasionally shows up as joining these, but never stays long and never comments, so I know she's watching occasionally. My parents-in-law, John and Colleen, are always on here, which is lovely of them. Hello, John. So when I got married, we had it out at the 702 wing, which is an incredible facility, had its own kitchen. We did all our own catering. We did a really good old-fashioned family wedding. It was incredibly fun. And it was incredibly small, and it was really, really intimate. And, being it was mine, I hand-selected the beer, and I hand-selected this, and I hand-selected like a house cocktail and everything else. And I went out and I found like this incredible, like $35 bottle of wine that was just incredible for a red. I loved it. I thought it was so impressive. And we brought that out and I was like, oh yeah, I guess it's hot. We should have a white wine too. So I picked this. And all I've heard about ever since is how much everyone loves the white wine, and not one person in all that time has ever brought up the red. So this wine shows very, very well. And let's talk a little bit about why. Now, Seebrich is imported to Canada through the Richmond Hill Group, which includes myself, Richmond Hill, Metro Vino, Banff Wine Store, and a bunch of others. Comes through a negociant, which is a fancy word for wine exporter, now named Klaus Kespler. We last had Klaus in the store, I think, about 8 years ago. And this was just when we started to really take off with German wine. And, he brought us a whole raft. We were standing at this exact tasting room, but this whole raft of sweet wines. And we're like, okay, Klaus, these are really good, but do you have anything dry? And he said, oh, well, that's all we sell in Germany. We thought North Americans liked the sweet stuff in Germany. We didn't bring very much. But he brought out like 4 wines, and this was one of them. And back then, they called this the Cuvée de Fruits de Mer, the Cuvée de Seafood. And it had these god-awful, like, clip art pictures of seahorses and starfish and crabs and everything all over the label. It was the most god-awful looking thing I've ever seen in my life. We said, okay, Klaus, we love the wine, but please, for the love of God, kill the label. The label is so bad. We can't sell this. So he went back and he said, okay, well, this is the label we sell it under in Germany. Does this work? And we said, yes, that's perfect. So this is the Seebrich Grauburgunder, which sounds very intimidating. It's not. Grauburgunder is very literal, like most things in the German wine industry. Oh, hello, Han. Good evening. Oh, did you bring a friend? Oh, that's nice. Welcome, Han's friend. Hand 2. Anyway, that was most of the bloody bottle. Anyway, with the Grauburgunder, it literally means the gray grape from Burgundy. Now, when we think about Burgundy, what we think about Pinot, specifically Pinot Noir. Well, when we talk about Pinot Noir, we're actually kind of doing it a disservice because Pinot is the grape, and there are 3 mutants of it. There's actually several mutants, but for our purposes, there's 3. There's Pinot Noir, the black mutant, or the red version, which gives you red wines. Pinot Blanc, which is the white mutant, which gives green skins and gives you white wines. And Pinot Gris, which gives you pink grapes, or gray grapes in the parlance. It's not perfect, but they're pink skins. Now, most of you are familiar with, people who make, white wines from Pinot Gris. You can actually make naturally rosé wines from Pinot Gris. It's not very commonly done. There's a region up in Italy called Veneto that is a style called Ramato, which means copper. And they actually make naturally pink Pinot Gris. We carry one. It's the only one I've really ever seen in this market. Anyway, this is a Pinot Grigio from Germany. And the first thing you're probably going to notice, apart from it being white and German, is it's not sweet. And thank goodness for that. I love German wine, and I love sweet German wine right up to candy sweet German wine, but I love dry white wine, especially it's warm today. My watch says it's plus 17. It was a lot warmer yesterday. It's getting to white wine deck season. And this is exactly the style of wine I like to drink on my back deck in the sunshine with my sunglasses on with a book. And, you know, I flatter myself thinking, oh, I'm going to make dinner after a glass. And then I'm into 3 glasses and I say, you know what, I'm going to order pizza. This is that kind of wine, and it's very much a Moorish sort of wine. Now, this comes from the Rhine-Hessian region, and the Rhine-Hessian is probably the largest of the German wine regions, and for a very long time it has been maligned. And when we get to the second Seebrich wine, we'll talk about that a little bit. Effectively, the Rhine-Hessian, because it was the largest, for a very long time it had the lowest per ton grape prices that wineries would buy. So for a very long time, it was used to make the absolute bottom of the barrel Liebfraumilchs and Urban Spätleses and just your kind of $9.99 to $11.99 bargain bin German sweet stuff that really didn't taste like anything other than apple juice and alcohol. And that's really mean, but it's also really true. This new approach of making these really, really dry, fresh Rhine-Hessian wines, and there have been dry wines made throughout Germany for a very long time, but it's somewhat newer to Rhine-Hessian, purely because they didn't have a lot of, you know, interesting winemaking going on here for a very long time. But the nice thing about Rhine-Hessian is compared to, say, the Rheingau, or compared to the Moselle, or compared to, say, Pfalz, or even compared to Naya, where land is not this really expensive, Rhine-Hessian land is reasonably cheap, except for, you know, regions in the Roter Hang, which again we'll get to. This is a place where if you want to take a risk, if you want to take a chance, if you want to make something experimental, if you're in the Rheingau or if you're in the Mosel, the land is so steep and difficult to harvest and expensive and prestigious that unless you're pretty sure you can sell your wines for $30 to $50 a bottle, you kind of can't really take a lot of chances. The Rhine-Hessian, and to a lesser extent the Naya, these are German regions where you can afford to take a chance because the land is reasonably inexpensive, and if you have a big miss, you know, you don't lose everything. You have a really bad year, but you can come back and try and get them next time. Let's just have a look. I am never maligning the Rhine. The Rhine-Hessian, sure. The Rhine River, the Rhine region, I would never malign. Also, I love the guy who just did the big shh motion to his friend. Thank you, friend. That was really nice of you. Let's have a look here at the comments so far. Hello, Stephen. What do we got for questions? Anything so far? Lots of hand comments. I agree. This is absolutely lovely. It's very fresh, very bright. And there's a little bit of effervescence. And this is the nice thing with some of these wines is they are bottled designed to be drank young. Whenever you see a bottle in a clear glass bottle, what the winemaker is telling you is, please, for the love of God, don't try to age this. You'll notice all of these wines don't have a cork. They're all screw caps. All of these are, take them home, open them, drink them, enjoy them. Please don't age them. They're lovely as they are. They will change as they age, but there's absolutely no guarantee they improve. So I really like that little bit of effervescence. That can be either bottled with a little bit of natural sugar left in the bottle so that it actually recarbs a touch, or with a very light, delicate wine like this, it can be the case that they are doing it with a little bit of a hit of SO2 just to preserve the freshness of the wine. On the nose and the mouth, we get bright primary fruit. We get apples, pears, lemons, limes. You might get a little bit of underripe stone fruit. You might get some white peach. You might get some apricot, maybe some nectarine if you really push for it. I get a bit of pineapple as well, which I quite like. But really, I mean, the alcohol is down at 12.5. It's bright and fresh and clean. Is it the most serious thing in the world? No, it's not supposed to be. It's just supposed to be, you know, fun deck wine, and it does it exceedingly well. The big word that you're looking for on this label, by the way, is in the fine print, which means Trocken. We will start talking a little more seriously about German wine labels and why I think they're the best labels in the world, even though they're somewhat confusing, when we get to the Leitz. We'll gush about Leitz here in a minute. But yeah, this is just a really nice, fresh, pretty Pinot Grigio. A little bit of what to preserve the wine, a little bit of sulfur. sulfur is, in a lot of ways in the winemaking world, kind of the wonder drug. Yeast is very, very sensitive to it, so if you've ever had some sort of fungal infection, you will actually be given sulfur drugs to kill it. So one of the big worries that you have with making wine is that the wine will start to spoil. Whether it starts to spoil as grapes or it starts to spoil in the bottle, at any step the wine can oxidize, the wine can become infected with bacteria, it could become infected with wild yeast that you don't want. Sulfur just kind of solves all those problems, even at very, very, very low concentrations. So you've spent the whole day harvesting grapes, they've got them sitting in big, wire baskets waiting to be crushed at the winery, but on the outside of the grape, it's very sticky. It has this outer waxy coating that attracts wild yeast. And you could actually have a bunch of grapes that you've picked sitting in a basket. They'll start to ferment on you. Well, how do you stop that? You hit them with a little bit of sulfur. You've got a whole bunch of grapes that you've just run through the crusher and they're sitting as fresh juice, but you don't want to add the yeast yet. Well, how do you stop how do you stop that juice from fermenting just with wild yeast? Hit with a little bit of sulfur. How do you clean your tanks, your hoses, your bottling equipment, your everything, your bottles? You can use sulfur. For people who have no sensitivity to sulfur, for whom sulfites or sulfates give them no headaches, it just passes, harmlessly through your system. I'm lucky enough to be one of those people. For people who aren't so lucky, then we start talking about wanting to look at natural winemaking processes, and like last week with the Casa Grande Badasal, all of that was done with the least amount of sulfur possible. But if you're making a reasonably high sweetness, low acid, low alcohol wine, there's not a lot of natural preservatives that will actually protect the wine. And as a result, a little hit of something will actually just protect the wine. It's antioxidant, it's antibacterial, it's antifungal. It will just protect the wine naturally. Well, not naturally, unnaturally, but it's very effective. Sushi from cocoa, yes, sushi in this would be absolutely perfect. And I think we will call that good with the Pinot Grigio for now. If you have questions, I'll happily go back to it because I absolutely love this wine. But let's move on a little bit. On to wine number 2, the Leitz Eins, Zwei, Dry, which is a pun. Eins, Zwei, Dry in German is 1, 2, 3. Eins, Zwei, and then it is a dry Riesling. They really wanted to push that German wine can be dry. Fun story on this. The very, very first time we got this wine, which I'll say right off the hop, is a Metrovino exclusive that they let us have out of incredible kindness. Thanks, guys. You're really saving our bacon with these awesome, awesome German wines that we get, that we have absolutely no right to, that you give us. Thank you again. But we brought this in for the very first time, I think 10, 12 years ago, and the market just straight up wasn't ready for them. Calgary was ready for this, did very well there, but just Lethbridge wasn't ready. We brought this in and this sat. This was absolute death. We opened it, we tasted people on it, nobody liked it. We couldn't sell it, we basically clearanced it out, nobody liked it. Now, I sell almost like half a case of this a day. It just goes nuts for us. Just wrong wine at the wrong time, suddenly now it's the right wine at the right time. From here we move from the Rhine-Hessen, which is perhaps, historically the least prestigious region in Germany, to the Rheingau, historically the most prestigious region in Germany. The Rheingau, if we go back to the 19th century, if you wanted a bottle of Rheingau dry Riesling from a really good vineyard, it would cost you more than a first growth of Bordeaux Red. For example, like Devin and I just got an email today about the 2010 vintage of Chateau Latour, a first growth vineyard in Bordeaux. A 6-liter bottle of that at our cost was being pitched to us at $19,340. This, which we now sell for the princely sum of $21.95, these style of wines used to actually be more expensive 140 years ago. It's funny how things change. This comes from the Rheingau, and the Rheingau is kind of one of those perfect places for making wine. The Rheingau is this one big long hillside. It's incredibly, incredibly steep. And when I say steep, like it's terraced, and when people want to harvest grapes, they clip themselves onto chains with a carabiner and haul themselves up. People have literally died harvesting these grapes. Some of the very, very best sites on the Rheingau are actually so steep that they can't sell the wine for enough money to make it worth them harvesting the grapes because of how much they'd have to pay people in danger pay to go get the grapes. So the vines just sit up there on that cliff till either safety equipment improves or wine prices get higher. This is incredible country. But what else other than the steepness makes this incredible? The soils are very, very rocky, but they get enough, so the drainage is really good. but they also get enough rain coming up that the grapes stay moist even though the soil doesn't really hold any water. The real magic of the Rheingau, though, is it's this natural stony amphitheater facing almost exactly due south, so it gets all of that beautiful, beautiful light from the sun. And then it has the Rhine River right at the base of the slope, which acts as a mirror, so the sun not only shines down on the grapes, it also hits the Rhine River and reflects back up onto the grapes, and it creates this natural heat trap, which gives you these incredible tropical fruit notes off the Riesling that you can't get in like a cold climate situation. You can only do this when you have a really warm, tropical sort of winemaking region, which is weird because it's in northern Germany, which is not exactly a warm, tropical part of the world. I want to take this opportunity to talk about these two wineries and also one more, which I suddenly realize I have misplaced the bottle. There she is. So here in the store, we have effectively 3 core German brands. These are the 3 that we talk about all the time. Seebrich is our everybody's going to like it brand. The Seebrich wines are crisp and fresh and always good value. They're always right around $19.95 to $21.95. They're always super interesting, but they're safe as houses. The Leitz stuff is the truly genius stuff. It's higher in acid. It's challenging for some people. It's super crisp. It's super crushingly dry. But this is hardcore nerd wine. It's brilliant. Like Leitz, like we have $70 and $80 and $90 Rieslings by Leitz, and they're all worth the money. These are the guys who do just mad things, but they do them exactly to style. Hexamer, who we're not going to taste tonight, these are our mad genius guys. These are our mad scientist guys. They'll do things like make almost a dry Riesling from like ice wine grapes. They'll make these super weird Rieslings from like an entirely quartzite site. When these guys are right on, they can be the best Rieslings in the store. When they're a little off, it's a chemistry experiment, but I love them so much for being such risk takers. We're not doing this one tonight, but I did want to talk about kind of the 3 opposing schools of our German winemakers. So we've talked about where this comes from. Let's talk about Riesling as a whole, because our next 2 wines are going to be based in Riesling. Now, Riesling is one of those grapes. Devin and I had this conversation, like, if you had to drink only one wine grape for the rest of your life, what would it be? Devin can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said Chardonnay, because with Chardonnay he'd get Chablis, and he'd get big oaky Chards if he wanted them, he'd get Champagne, he'd get a whole bunch of things. For me, I went Riesling because you can make sparkling wine out of Riesling. It makes ice wine. It makes perfectly serviceable, like gorgeous dry wines. It makes beautiful sweet wines. It makes just about everything. And that's kind of my thing with Riesling. Riesling and I are best friends. Oh, hello, hand 2. Thank you. So this is, to me, the wine that, of everything on the table here that I would probably take home. I say that now. I'll probably open this and completely change my mind. But this is the style, to me, that gets me out of bed in the morning. This is the reason that I own a wine store, is Rieslings like this. To me, with Riesling, it's one of those mirror grapes. For those of you who were here with us for our South African tasting, when we first talked about mirror grapes, when I talk about mirror grape, it reflects the soil and the climate conditions that year. It's a perfect like miniature portrait of what happened that year in terms of soil, what happened in terms of weather, what happened in terms of everything. It's the encapsulation of a single site. In a certain sense, every wine is. But there are certain grapes that really do that better than others, and I think Riesling does it better than any other. Pinot Noir does a really great job of that as well. But Riesling to me is just that I can, if I'm really flattering myself, I think I can taste everything that happened that year, and I love that about Riesling. It's so transparent. Devin really likes ferment, and that's fair. Ferment's also great. One of these days we will get to ferment. And Steve, yes, the camera work is on point tonight. Aaron is absolutely fantastic, and also thank you for your lighting rig, you and Craig. And Louie, the hand showed up. He got his. Any other questions we got tonight? I think that's all for questions so far. I apologize, we don't have a guest speaker this evening. We potentially will next week. I'm not going to jinx myself, but we may have a special guest next week that'll be something we haven't had so far. I want to talk a little bit, just very briefly, because this isn't going to turn into a promotion yet. That comes after the next wine. But I do want to talk about, our next few are going to be Canada, and then we're going to have Portugal, and then we are going to have Argentina. And for Argentina, I actually have booked a winemaker from Argentina who's going to join us live on cam and talk about his wines. So that's in 3 more weeks. So that's going to be really, really fun. I'm hoping to have something really special for Canada, and I'm working on something for Portugal. But yeah, the Argentine one, we already have a gentleman from Argentina who's going to jump on cam with us and talk about his wines live from Argentina, which I think is just the absolute best thing. Okay, so let's stick with Riesling. We'll go from bone dry, or Trocken, to quite sweet. Now, how do we know that one's going to be dry and one's going to be sweet? Well, I mean, it's called Eins, Zwei, dry, obviously. It does say dry in English right at the bottom of the label, which I do rather appreciate. But if you spin around to the back, it does say Trocken as well, which is the German word for dry. And you'll find that commonly on both this, and I believe it's on the Pinot as well. Did they mention it? No, they actually don't, for shame. Louie Guntrum, but it is dry as well. This one, on the other hand, says Kabinett, which literally means cabinet or cupboard, in the sense of this is not your everyday wine, this is the special one you keep in the cupboard for when company comes over. And you're probably thinking I'm making that sound really quaint and old-fashioned. That's about literally what it means. It means reserve, or wine that you keep in the cupboard for special guests or company. Kind of like when, you know, your grandmother would have special guests over, so they get to sit in the fancy living room with the furniture with the plastic on it. It's that sort of wine. So that's what Kabinett means. But in terms of winemaking style, Kabinett means wine that is sweet, but not getting up into the dessert sweetnesses. I'm not going to get into the Tafel wine, Qualitätswein, VDP wines, Predicats wine during the main tasting. If somebody's really curious, hit me up kind of in the question and answer at the end and I'll get into it. I'm not going to, because while I find it interesting, almost nobody else does. I will talk a little bit about place names and about German wine labels in general here, though, and why I love German wine labels more than any other wine labels in the world. We're going to jump over here to my Australian section, and we're going to pull out Gleitzer Almenra. It's a $80 bottle of Australian wine, very famous, really spectacular. What does it tell us? It tells us it's a Shiraz. It's from the Barossa Valley from 2018, and it's made by a guy named Ben Gleitzer. Cool. But the Barossa Valley's huge. The Barossa Valley's, you know, a valley. It's absolutely massive. You know, we don't know if it's going to be sweet or if it's going to be dry. We can make an inference if we have some, you know, forehand knowledge that, you know, generally Australian Shirazes are quite dry. And if we look at the alcohol up here at 15% alcohol, Christ, it's basically port, we can probably infer that it's going to be dry, or if it's not dry, what did that start with in, you know, an initial sugar of? Because if you ferment it to 15% alcohol and it's not dry, that must have been basically raisins. But it doesn't tell us a whole lot. Well, what does the Seebrich here tell us? Well, it tells us it's from Niersteiner Ölberg. Now, the ER here means it is from the village of Nierstein, the vineyard of Ölberg, and its Kabinett. So, again, without going too much into the quality spectrum, we're going to say this comes from the highest quality tier of German wine, but it's made semi-dry. It will also tell us that it is, does it say if it's a Weingut? It does not. I'm going to grab one other bottle. Where's my bottle from before? This guy here. This is the one I usually give this talk on. So let's jump back a bit. So this is Weingut Hexamer from the Naya. Hexamer is the name of the producer. Weingut says, okay, these guys don't buy grapes. They either own their own vineyards or they lease them and operate themselves. So they're their own farmers as well as their own winemakers. It comes from the Naya, so we know which valley it's from, kind of like this says it's from the Barossa Valley. This one doesn't say it anymore, but this one in different vintages will say it is from a particular village. It will say it's from a particular vineyard, and then it will say it is from off der Südseite, or off the south side of the vineyard. So whereas this wine label, if you read this and you went to the Barossa Valley, you'd say, oh wow, I'm in a valley about the size of like the Crow's Nest Pass. I have no idea where I'm going. with German wine labels, you can almost walk. You know, it's the region of Nye, it's the village of Niersteiner, it's the vineyard of Olberg, and then it's off the south side of that vineyard. You can almost walk to within like 100 yards of where the grapes are grown. And you can be standing there with just nothing but a wine bottle as your GPS, which I find absolutely amazing about the German wine industry and why I love the labels so much. You can even get a rough idea of the quality of the wine, again, based on the quality scale. So let's jump into the Seebrich Kabinett. Now, this is a sweeter Riesling. I'm going to make no bones about it. This is the style of Riesling that I think a lot of people malign. You'll notice sweeter because less of the sugars have been turned into alcohol. This bone-dry Riesling is up at 12%. This guy's down at 9.5, just simply because less of the sugar has been fermented out. It has been left in the wine, so it is sweeter. It's just wonderful the way everything makes sense with wine. I love that. In the mouth, I think for some reason the acidity, that stingy, wonderful, tingling feeling all through your mouth is even more apparent in this Seebrich than it was with the dry wine. Yes, you get that like bright, fresh apple juice character, and then on top of that you get something like a beeswaxy sort of thing right in the back. But right off the hop, I get nothing but just tingly acid and pineapple and almost something like white peach. You just finished your last glass, you lunatic bloody hand. There we are. So, why do I love Riesling so much? Why is this what I get into? Why? Because you can make it sweet, you can make it dry. Lots of grapes you can do that. Because you can make it, you know, as something that will age a really long time versus something that will, you know, be drank with a screw cap and just be really great fresh. The oldest Riesling in the world comes from the 1400s. It's being stored in this giant, like building-sized room barrel under a bar in Alsace. Like wine bar. And they'll still sell you glasses. One of my life's ambitions is to try it. You have such wonderful different things you can do with it. And this wine, because it's a sweet wine, the dry wines don't cycle like this, but when this wine was fresh, when it first went in the bottle, let's say it's 2020 now, so it's probably from, let's say 2019. When it first went in the bottle, it was just nothing but bright primary tropical fruit, kind of like this one is right now. But eventually it slowly slides down, and it gets down into that character of like beeswax and honey and apricots and petroleum, and then it kind of climbs its way back up to a peak of fruit again, and then back and down. And as time goes on, those waves get smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually when a wine is at its peak with Riesling, you get those primary fruit characters and those secondary and tertiary kind of oily, slick, waxy notes in equal amounts. And that's when the Riesling's at its peak and ready to drink. I love that you can, you know, have the same wine, and if you get it, you know, 3 months apart, right at its fruit peak and right at its oily peak, they're just completely different wines from each other. And this is something we discussed before about every wine, once it goes in the bottle, being its own different universe. So once this wine's been bottled, once it's been bottled out of the tank and capped, it has no relation to the bottles next to it. If it has a tiny bit higher alcohol than the other bottles, or there's a tiny bit more sugar, it sees a little bit more light, or it gets a little more heat during its journey from Germany here, or during its storage here. Or it happens to be in the store in a place where a sun ray comes through the window and shines on it for a few days. It could be in a completely different place in that wave than the other wines around it, which I find so interesting. We could have had a guest for tonight, but I didn't want that because I love Riesling so much. I love talking about it. This is perhaps the topic that, I will go way too long on. You people are going to have to tell me to shut up. But it's the one that I find the most interesting and stirring and moving, is how interesting this particular grape and its interpretations from good German wineries can be. And yes, I did say petroleum. And when I say petroleum, I'm not saying like stinky diesel. I'm not saying stinky gasoline. I'm thinking like a clean petroleum jelly, like a Vaseline sort of thing. And it's really subtle. It's way at the back. But if you lean in and say, okay, well, I get pineapples and I get lemons and limes and I get apples, but there's something else here. There's something lingering that sticks at the back of my tongue, and I keep tasting it. What is that? The word we use, at least in the wine industry, whether it's right or wrong, is petroleum. Because to a lot of people, myself included, it kind of reminds us a little bit of Vaseline. It's really mild. but it's definitely back there, and it just sticks around. And it's not a bad smell. I like the smell of Vaseline. It's very clean, kind of medical sort of smell. It's very pretty. But yeah, it definitely sticks around. Let's have a look at the questions. Wim, the Seebrich is so sweet compared to the others. The first white was excellent. You definitely prefer the Eins, Zwei dry even more. Yes, you know what? You're absolutely correct. I will sell 5 times more of these than this. But this is a German tasting. I couldn't talk about the present without talking about 300 years of German tradition of making wines like this. We could have done this tasting and maybe sold a bit more wine if I did 3 dry whites and then a red. But to do a German tasting and not talk about everything they've done, like the German, they invented ice wines. They have so many interesting styles of dessert wine. They have so many different traditions for making wines. Late harvest, dry, sweet, sparkling. They've done so much with one grape in Riesling. We had to do something sweet. Did I expect that this was going to be some people's least favorite grape? Yes, I did. It's just like the Clint Pinotage. Some people absolutely loved it. Some people stopped attending these tastings because I showed it. But you know what? Sometimes you got to show a wine that you're passionate about, and I'm passionate about this because I'm passionate about German wine. For me, going home at the end of shift and I want a bottle of wine, sure, it'd be this or maybe this. I wouldn't take this home that often. But if I'm doing barbecue pork ribs with a sweet red sauce on them, hell yeah, I'm taking that home. That's exactly the right pairing. See what else we got for questions here. Should all the whites be served chilled? Yes, John, they should. Let's quickly rip through here, make sure we get all of them. Sorry, it's never interesting to watch me scroll through comments. Why was the Seebrich bubbly when we poured it? 2 possible reasons. One, that they gave it a little tiny shot of sulfur. Sulfur, we discussed it right at the very, very start, but sulfur in terms of winemaking is a bit of a magic bullet. It will be antibacterial, antifungal, and antioxidant. What are the 3 things that will destroy wine when it's in bottle? A little bit of oxygen getting in turns the wine to vinegar. A little bit of bacteria getting in, the wine could potentially even be toxic. A little bit of fungus getting in, then you're risking the wine re-fermenting in a bottle and basically turning it to hand grenades. That's really rare this day, but that used to be a thing that happened. That's one of the ways. The other ways is that if you leave a low enough alcohol and enough sugar in the wine, it may spontaneously re-ferment in bottle a bit. Either can happen. I would guess, knowing the winery, that it's probably a little bit of gaseous sulfur added to preserve freshness, but it could be re-fermentation in bottle. Do they ever use nitrogen? No, because nitrogen is not sufficiently antifungal. It will actually help absorb oxygen, I believe, but it will not absorb fungus and will not impede bacteria. So I'm sure you folks are itching to know what we are doing for our next couple of events. We have a couple of things coming up. So for the beer tasting next week, we are going to go back to the brewery that started it all back in 2014. A brewery that my staff will literally never let me forget. I didn't like the first time I tasted them. And I will never live that down because the beers are literally the beers that revolutionized the microbrew industry in Alberta. We're going to be tasting Blind Men. We've done 88, we've done Establishment, we've done a mix pack. None of the beers that we have tasted to this point would exist today if it weren't for the groundwork laid by Blind Men. It is literally impossible to overstate what these guys did to actually start microbrewing on an incredibly high quality level in Alberta. I remember when the Blind Men New England Pale first launched, I believe in 2015 or 2016, it was, you got up at 4 a.m. to like log in at 5 to start placing your orders to try and get it. It was just madness. So this is a foundational brewery for me in Alberta. We've been tasting the New England Pale, the brand new Florida Weiss, which is called lemon, limes, and clementines, because those are the fruits they put in it. The final experimentation batch of the Kettle Sour, and finally the Five of Diamonds Pills. That is our upcoming beer tasting. And that is Wednesday. Next, we are doing Canada next week, which I'm very excited about. Thank you for everybody who voted on the Facebook and Twitter polls. Canada won by an absolute landslide. For those of you who voted for Argentina and Portugal, don't be too sad. We will be getting to all of those in the next month. Wasn't so much a what should we do, it was a what should we do next. So we're going to be doing the Creek and Gully naturally fermented Pet Nat cider. Now, I know we're going to have some questions about this cider, but A, this is killer, and B, we were really struggling to do a truly amazing Canadian wine tasting at $80 a head. So we did a cider, and we did these two wines as well. Canada's kind of spendy compared to every other country in the world, consequences of being a first world brand new wine region. But we wanted to do something incredible no matter what. So we did a cider, and we cut it to 3. We argued so much about what we were going to do for this, but at the end of the day, we put more thought into this than any other we've done so far, and I think that we're going to be very, very happy with how this comes out. So a cider into a Roussanne from Lake Breeze, and Roussanne is one of those grapes that we're going to talk about a lot because it's incredibly endangered, incredibly hard to make, and incredibly hard to make well, and that's really, really good. Finally, we have the Juvet. This is by Averill Creek Vineyards. We may have a special guest from Averill Creek. I can't guarantee anything. I tried to firm it up before the event tonight. We didn't get a call back. We may have someone from the winery joining us. Fingers crossed, not promising anything yet, but we're hoping. So that's our next couple. Coming up in the weeks ahead, we have the Argentine tasting, which will have a winemaker from Argentina. We have the Portugal tasting. That's coming up as well. But that is next week is Canada. So let us run into the Guntrum. Tri-Spectrum. I actually had a lovely conversation with Daryl. Daryl flatly doesn't have enough beer to sell me to support this event. I actually invited him to be our second ever presenter. Oh, hello, Hand. I invited him to be our second ever presenter for our beer tastings after our initial mixed 4-pack one. But he flatly doesn't have enough beer. I mean, I am a victim of his success. He is selling so much beer and having so much fun and going so hard that right now he doesn't have the beer to sell me. If it becomes a possibility, we'll absolutely have Daryl and I hope Elaine on the show and they will show off their beers. But right now he doesn't even have the beer to give me. We did have a conversation about it. It's in the cards, it's in the works. It's just dependent on when he has enough beer in cans to do it. Let's have a look through the next bit and then we'll get on to the reds. Okay, so let's get on to the red. So this is Louie Guntrum. Louie Guntrum is a brand I think we've had in the store off and on literally since I started. We have 3 of their wines right now, one of which is very much like the Leitz. We have the Pinot Noir, and then they have, I don't know how they're making it, but they have a sub $15 retail Riesling that I think is just literally called Louie Guntrum Riesling. It's like really shockingly good for like $14.75. Louie Guntrum is based out of the Rheinhessen, but they're based out of the Roterhang, and this is something I wanted to talk about a little bit with this. So when we talk about the Rheinhessen as being like this big commercial wine region, this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about with the Pago system with Spain last week. So within Valencia, which is a big, very industrialized, very kind of commercialized wine region, the very, very best sites are selected as Pago sites. Well, within the Rheinhessen, there's a couple of sites that are really, really famous for being a higher quality, and that's known as the Roterhang, which is to say that they use red slate soils and they're fairly steep. The Roterhang is literally a big chunk of red slate that sticks out of the middle of the valley, and That's kind of where Ölberg is, from Nierstein Ölberg. That's where these wines are sourced from. The best wines from the Rheinhessen are sourced from there, and it's kind of a sub-region, if you like. This is Pinot Noir. I don't actually have the statistics on this, but I mean, there's a lot of grapes for red planted in Germany. There's Dornfelder, there's Pinot Noir, obviously. There's some Saint Laurent, there's some other things as well. But for Germany, at least, it's a little warmer than Austria, so it does a little better with Pinot. And this is very different than French Pinot and very different than, say, Californian Pinot. It doesn't have that cherry cola thing that I get from very hot climate regions like New Zealand or California or southern BC, where it gets this like almost Dr. Pepper sort of thing going on in the palate. This is definitely not French. It doesn't have that very dry, earthy, delicate character. It doesn't have the florals. But what it does have in abundance is just buckets and buckets of really bright, friendly cherry fruit. It's got really nice earthiness down deep if you look for it. But this is a very happy wine. Now, you can't tell, but the Leitz that I'm working with are very, very hot. And while the white ones are fresh out of the fridge and are still vaguely cold, this started out at room temperature and is starting to warm up to almost to the point of my hands, so a little warmer than it probably should be because of these lights. This is the one that would actually do very nicely lightly chilled, and then chill it down, not quite to fridge temperature, but chill it down for a few minutes in the fridge and then bring it out to the back deck and let it warm up as you drink it. It'll give you a really nice character that way. This is one of those lovely, light, refreshing, fun reds. This is a Pinot Noir that I might serve in a jug, shaped like the Kool-Aid Man, because it's fun. This is one of those really lovely, everyday sort of reds that we don't see all that often. I see a lot of wines at $21.95 pretending like they want, Parker 100 points, and they're made super, super serious, and there is absolutely a market for those, but I don't know, most people, myself included, when I come in the store and I'm just looking to take a bottle of wine home to have on the back deck, I don't need someone's wine that they've decided needs to live for 8 years before you open it. I'd rather just pick it up, take it home, and drink it. And wines like, I think all of these for the most part, this you perhaps could age, but these are all wines that are designed to be drank young and fresh and bright, and they're not heavily oak aged. Like, has anybody here, and I'll check the comments here in a sec, has anybody picked up a single oak note in the wines? And more to the point, has anybody missed it for not being there? Oh, I do not envy you, Lindsay, a week of homeschooling. I do a little bit of like wine teaching where I get to get drunk like twice a week, and that's almost too much. A week of homeschooling sounds very painful, and you are doing a magnificent job. Oh, and in Becky, the question regarding COVID easing and this continuing, this will absolutely continue. A, because I'm having way too much fun to stop, and B, because we don't know to what degree they're going to ease. Everything is very much up in the air. We don't know what things are going to look past May 14th. They could look like anything. So no, these are fun. We've got a fun crowd. We're having a ton of fun doing these. We're going to keep doing them. If we get to the point where we only have 6 people buying the package, then maybe we look at winding it up. But right now we're selling like 60 packages, so we're not worried about that anytime soon. So we're having a ton of fun. We're not going to stop because we're having too much fun to stop. And we're adding winemakers and things. Like, I've got too many things booked down the road already to make this even better to stop now. So how about this? This is forever until I say it's not. Okay, so that is a very tiny scraping of the surface of Germany with a lot of my rambling love for Germany inserted, because me and Germany are the best of friends with wines. Questions, comments, what do you want to know? What can I explain to you? What would you like to know about wine? I'm here. This is literally the wine region that I'm the most passionate about, so I'm going to be heartbroken if there's no questions. Yes, Taryn, forever till I say it's not. It's my tasting, and I get to make up the rules. So if we don't get questions, then I'm going to, can we do an oaked versus unoaked Chardonnay tasting? Oh yeah. Mike or Aaron, would you write that down? Oaked versus unoaked Chardonnay, because that's actually a hell of an idea, because there's so many different places we can take that would be fascinating. And yes, I also agree the ideas of being able to do a wine tasting and have like a wine tasting in your home, not worrying about driving, having your own food, being able to order pizza, just be comfortable on your couch and do things at your own pace. And if you decide you have to get up and do something else, you can pause it, and you won't be able to ask questions, but you can watch the rest of the event without worrying about missing something. I think we've really hit on something here, and we are going to keep on doing this to the best of our ability. Have I traveled to all these places? No. I'm a giant maps, atlases nerd when it comes to all of this. So I've spent way too much time. You'll laugh at me. Google Maps on my phone, there's a road that follows the Rhine River along the course of the Rheingau on the opposite bank of the river, and you can look up at the Rheingau as you go. In terms of wine regions, I have been through basically all of California. I've been to the Okanagan, and if you don't know, what I originally got brought into the store to do, because this was before my dad retired and before Sean left to found Wine Cavern, I wasn't really needed to be the wine guy. I got here to sell scotch, and my first real trip to like a producing region was to go to Scotland and do the scotch buying and do the scotch touring and to learn about scotch. That's what I got brought here to do. And then I got really into beer, and I went to California, and I went to Florida, and I went to all over the dang place, learning about really great microbrewing. And I really kind of came to wine last, not because I didn't have a passion for it, but because with my dad around and for a while there with Sean around, I didn't need to know it. It wasn't needed in the store. It wasn't what we needed someone to do. So I came to it last. I came to it very passionately, and I love it. It's actually my favorite thing. But yeah, I haven't been to as many wine regions as I'd like because I kind of came to it very late. Karen, we need to figure out how to scotch tasting. Well, leave it with me. We recently discovered that one of our big industrial suppliers will sell us little tiny 2-ounce tasting jars. There have been many meetings afoot about how to safely package and distribute and label, as so far as the AGLC won't find the hell out of us, individual scotch tasting packages. That's in the works. It's going to be a bit because the little tiny tasting jars come in a minimum pack of 244. So we've definitely got to commit to this all the way. But yes, we are working on that. I'm not going to say it's going to happen like right away, but it's something we are having, not quite daily, but like 3 times a week conversations about making happen for you. What about Max as a guest speaker? You know what? I don't have an Australian tasting booked, but I want to say this about doing that idea. When I came into the wine industry in 2000 to today, 20 years later, Australia and California and Argentina, and to a lesser extent Chile, they ran the market. Being into old world wines was being a renegade. It was being, rebelling against my dad. Oh, Dad, you've built this entire store on Australian wines. Oh, I've decided I don't like Australian wine. I'm just going to drink European wine. And, well, it kind of stuck, unfortunately. But my dad was actually, when he was my age and a little younger, he was the opposite. He started in '85, and the whole world was all about old world wine and the idea of European wine being superior. I am having a moment. No, come back. I'll pour for you. God, fucking hand. I believe that's the first F-bomb on the channel. But anyway, my dad, he was the opposite. He came into an industry where everything was about Bordeaux and, traditional winemaking. And he came in with this idea that, hey, maybe if we start importing Australian wines and Chilean wines and start doing that, he was a rebel in that sense. So if I was going to do a tasting with my dad, it would have to be about Australia, because I came into it when it was at its peak and becoming passé. He was, without any exaggeration, the person who introduced Australian wines to southern Alberta. It would have to be an Australian night. And I would love to do one with him, because that would be absolutely amazing. I know language. I know. First F-bomb on the channel. I'm sorry. Not that sorry, but I'm sorry. Also, you should have seen our social media director almost lose it laughing. You're a vegetarian. What do you eat with the red? Ooh, mushrooms. Mushrooms and Pinot Noir go together like strawberries and cream to me. That's one of those natural tasting pairings that go super well. Okay, so I am going to talk a little bit about the German quality system, just briefly. This can get very dry, but I'm going to keep it as not dry as I can because it is an important thing. And if we're going to do a German tasting, and I'm not getting enough questions, then I will just touch on this briefly. Effectively, there are 3 tiers to the German quality system, and they are basically, there's Landwein, which used to be called Tafelwein, which is your bare bones, minimum quality. They can add sugar to it, which is called chaptalization. They can add artificial acid to it, which is called acidification. They can source the grapes from basically anywhere. They can use any blend of grapes. These are ones like Liebfraumilch, where they're sweet, they're broadly appealing, I guess, and they're serviceable sweet. They're what your grandmother drank at Thanksgiving 20 years ago. They're very, very uninteresting but serviceable white wines. But the Germans said, okay, well, maybe adding sugar to bring up the sweetness, maybe adding acid to cover up our bad harvesting practices, maybe that's not what we believe in. They added the Qualitätswein, literally quality wine. German's a fun language. The Qualitätswein system. They said, okay, well, you can't add sugar, you can't add, artificial alcohol, you can't add too much acid. You can add a little bit if things are just a little off, but there's limits. And that's Qualitätswein. That's what we call QBA. And that's what this would qualify as, and I believe so is this. Basically, you can't muck about with the wine too much. You can't apothecary it. You can't muck about it to the point where it doesn't resemble its starting ingredients. The wine has to be made, at least in the vineyard, to a certain extent. Then there is, Qualitätswein mit Predikat, or with special qualities, which we have thankfully shortened to Predikatswein, or special wine. This is where we start using terms like Kabinett. And effectively, that is a highest tier of quality that is broken into sub-tiers. So Kabinett is your quality table wines. Spätlese literally means late harvest. Auslese is your next step, which is kind of your entry-level dessert wine. Birne Auslese, then Eiswein, or ice wine. Then Trocken Birne Auslese is your highest grade. These are your kind of premier dessert wine styles of Germany, and basically there are different ways of taking the water out of the grape so that the wine is very, very concentrated, whether by drying the grape on the vine, drying the grapes by freezing the juice, or whatever different method. So yeah, the German quality system is complicated, but it does make perfect sense. Hello, hand. Yes. Oh, the dry Riesling. I tend to agree with you, yes. Let's quickly rip through some comments and questions to make sure we get some stuff. Any good pairings for the wines? Let's run through this really quickly. I think this is an ideal deck wine. It would do simple pastas, like if you wanted to do like a pasta with kind of pasta sauce or something very light, or if you wanted to do like very, very clean, like fish or chicken. This is, just drink this on its own. That's where it's happiest. That's a on its own sort of wine. The Leitz has really, really nice high acidity. It would do beautifully with spinach salad. It would do beautifully with a anything with a citrus dressing. It would do really well with, actually, I love bone dry Riesling in sushi, especially sashimi, where you just have that incredible protein complexity, and then you match it with this powerful dry Riesling with lots going on. And fennel and Riesling are just strawberries and cream together. Doesn't matter if it's dry Riesling or sweet, fennel is beautiful with both. Sweeter Rieslings, now we're getting into like the sweeter style of Indian curries. So if you're looking at a korma, or if you're looking at a buttered chicken, something like that does really, really well. Americanized Chinese cuisine, like your ginger beef, so your sweet and sour chicken or whatever, that does really well with these styles because the acidity breaks up the fats and the sweetness works with the sweetness in the dish. Pinot Noir, Pinot Noir is beautiful with mushrooms, it's beautiful with duck, it's beautiful with a lot of wild game. So if you're looking at very, very lean meats like elk, it works beautifully as well as anything with like a red berry sauce. So if you're doing a Saskatoon or blackberry sauce, that does really, really well together. Where are things at with the blind taste test? Coming along. The flat truth of the matter is there's a wine we really want to put in it that hasn't landed yet. So it's on the ocean from Europe. We want to put it in the tasting. We kind of need it to hit the price point we want to hit with this, and we really want to include the wine. So it hasn't landed in Montreal yet, so we're waiting on it. That's why we went from being right after Canada to kind of not mentioned. Is not that we've forgotten about it. We're just waiting for this bloody boat to dock in Montreal. That's why it's been pushed. Bloody boats, eh? Let's see where we're at next. Can we do Washington State? Yes, we absolutely could. I just have to bring in some more Washington State wines. How's the weather? Well, it's unstable. It was really cloudy and rainy and windy when I went for my morning bike ride. Now it's actually quite nice. What's the difference for white wine glasses to red wine glasses? So, if you folks are noticing, I've used the same glass for every one of these. This is a company called Gabriel Glass. These are clone glasses at I think 30-ish bucks of effectively a $90 or $100 Austrian crystal glass. This style of glass, the $100 version, I've seen in the market before. Devin, when he was over in Austria this past fall, he found this glass company because every winery he went to was using these as their tasting glasses because they were a lot cheaper than the $100 versions, and you know they were something. If somebody broke one, it wouldn't be, or stole one, wouldn't be the end of the world. This is just a really nice everyday glass for a lot of things. We sell these. Shameless plug, but whatever. The difference between a white wine glass and a red wine glass. Traditionally, a red wine glass is a bigger balloon because it wants to absorb more oxygen, it wants to absorb a little more heat from your hands, it wants to be kind of warm and oxidized and friendly. A white wine glass traditionally has a smaller balloon, less oxidation, less contact, less heat. It wants to stay smaller, colder, less oxidized, tighter. It's just, and some glasses are good for both. I really like these for both. And yeah, Devin does make a good point. Washington would be pricey just because of the U.S. exchange rate, but we're doing 3 next week for Canada. We could do 3 with Washington as well. Oh, wine tonight's so good. I think so too. This is my passion. Are there some German wineries that fell off in the last 20 to 30 years and have brought it back around and are currently killing it? I'm going to take a pass on that because I can't think of any. And this is partly because of the fact that I only started in the industry like as an 18-year-old kid 20 years ago. So at the bottom end of your age range, I was kind of, 18. I would say the German industry as a whole has pulled up its socks and done better work. I can't really speak to that time scale just because of how long I've been in the industry. That's getting to the point where I was literally hired to drive the delivery truck. Certain Dr. Zenzen about 20 years ago. My dad actually was the first person to bring Dr. Zenzen to market. And Dr. Zenzen does have a premium line. We actually have tried carrying them a couple of times because they have stuff kind of like this and like this. They just don't sell. The Dr. Zenzen stuff, you know what? It paid a lot of bills for us back in the day. Like, I can remember when I was 14 to 15, my dad would get up at 5 a.m. to receive pallets of Dr. Zenzen out at the warehouse to, make sure we paid the bills because Dr. Zenzen was big business back in the day. They're still a really good winery. We've tried bringing in their premium stuff. It just doesn't move because I think Dr. Zenzen's been painted, unfortunately, with the brush of being fairly cheap wine. Fairly or unfairly, I think their premium stuff's quite good. I just can't sell it because people expect it to be the price of the cheap stuff. You love the third Riesling. Virtual tasting wine course with Plum. We're exploring with more and more local businesses. Like we've got a floral promotion with New Hope YQL Florist for Mother's Day, which I'll be pitching at you soon, Craig. Don't you worry. No, more and more local businesses partnering with different people. That's what all this is about. We have the incredible luxury of being allowed to be open. Not all businesses downtown have that, so we are trying to partner with more and more businesses to do as much as we can to help out other people downtown and abroad. The third Riesling, can you recommend other Rieslings that are similar in this vein of this quality? Well, the Riesling Quartzit by Hexamer, it's done by my knees. This continues to be excellent. This is a absolutely fabulous Riesling. Kurt Hain has a really spectacular Riesling that's very much like this. These guys actually have another Riesling that is Kabinett quality that's very much like this. Leitz has a Riesling Kabinett for this sort of price as well. It's also very good. The König Victoriaberg Riesling. I can't remember the name of the winery. I can remember the name of the vineyard, but we have another one. It's got a very, very fancy label because the winery was originally by appointment to Queen Victoria. But that as well would be a really, really good example of a really classy Riesling Kabinett. But yeah, any of those would do beautifully. Chile, Argentina, I agree. We're doing Argentina in 3 weeks. Chile will come. Chile will come. What's a weak German? A weak German is a wine that it's Tafel wine, or they now call it land wine quality. I apologize if I've used both terms interchangeably. It used to be the term Tafel wine or table wine. They recently changed it to a land wine because it sounded less shitty. Trying to come up with a better word, I can't. The idea of a bad German wine is to say that a wine has been artificially sweetened or chaptalized, artificially acidified by adding dried packaged acid powder, a wine that has been basically mucked about with on a chemical level. It doesn't reflect anything about the vineyard or the grapes or the region that it comes from. You know, you can make a wine, as long as you make it honestly, that's $9.95, and it can be good or bad or indifferent, but at least it's honest. At least you're representing your base ingredients. When you take a wine that might have had possibility of being good, and then you add sugar or acid or alcohol to make it what you think fits market trends, you're not going to end up with anything good. You're going to end up with something perhaps saleable, but it's not going to have any heart and soul, and I don't like that particular aspect of the German wine industry. It's been going on far too long and is happily now going away. Steve, Verona, Valpolicella, Ripasso, Amarone. So for those not familiar, those are 3 wines made from the same blend of grapes of Corvina, Rondinella, and Molinara from the region of Verona in northeastern Italy, kind of where the same part of the world they make Prosecco in. That would be really, really fun. I would love to do that and talk about the appassimento method. I'm going to skip past the that's what she said, but thanks for the that's what she said. Third's your fave. What's your least favorite? Too much perfume? I like the perfume, but I completely understand where you're getting at, Don. 1, 3, 2, 4. Fair, Deirdre. 1, 3, 2, 4. 2, 1, 3, 4. Wow, no, okay. Not a lot of love for 4. If I don't want to bias anyone. 2, 3, 1, 4 for me, and that's not to say this is a bad wine in the slightest. I absolutely love this as a Pinot Noir, but I'm a white wine person at my core, and These are two of my favorite wineries. I carry 3 wines by Louie Guntrum, and I recommend the heck out of them all the time. There is nothing to say that the Guntrum is a bad wine, but it's just, this is just exactly what I like. So, you know, personal tastes. See, I also like the third one more after a bit of time. I've still got it in my glass. I keep coming back to it because we're not used to sweetness anymore. Like, you know, when I started in 2000, Australia was in big boom, and then we got Argentine Malbec is the big boom, and then we got New Zealand Sauv Blanc's the big boom, and then we got into whatever the hell else we got into. We just kept going with big dry reds and big dry whites and California oaky Chardonnays. We're not used to these sweet, light, low alcohol wines that are perfectly charming. We're just not used to them. They're very outside our comfort zone to a point, and I kind of love that they're so different. Yes, abroad like the West Side. Shh, don't make fun of me. I say silly things sometimes. And British pizza is very good, that's true. But yes, I am also abroad on the West Side. You want an absolutely fabulous tasting at a slightly higher price point. You know what? Years and years and years and years and years ago, we used to do a masterclass tasting series, and we only did one a year. And we do it at, I think we did about $125 for a sit-down tasting. You get like 12 wines or 10 wines and dinner. They were a bugger to sell tickets to, but they were a lot of fun. You know, when Craig, send me a message. We'll see what we can set up. It'd be a smaller thing, but you know, the idea of these is never to make money. It's been to do something fun for people. So yeah, if you want to set up like a mini masterclass, we can do that. That would be very fun. Do we still have tunes going on? Okay. Apparently people don't like the tunes.
No, they don't like them too.
They said gas the tunes. I don't know if that means gas them up and make it louder or gas them and get rid of them.
Maybe ask for a clarification there.
Does that mean louder tunes or quieter tunes? We're not sure what gas means.
Right?
Oh, good Lord, I have 53 more comments. Oh, good Lord. Well, I'm glad I don't have to pee, unlike the beer tasting. The price point is spot on, but it might be okay. The price point is spot on, but it might be interesting to do a reasonably priced wine versus an expensive comparison. Let me be very clear. The price of wine and the quality of the wine have, past a certain point, absolutely nothing to do with each other. I think there are $90 whites on a lot of store shelves, probably including mine, that aren't as good as this. I think that this shows up very well against a lot of $30 whites. I think this can show in a blind tasting very well comfortably against $40 and $50 whites. At a certain point, it's your own biases, what you like. It's the quality of the winemaking going into it. It's a lot of things. I don't think that there's really a magic formula for making wine a certain price. Really, it's base cost plus exchange rate times ludicrous hype or not, and that can move either way, equals maybe a fair price. Wine pricing is weird. A lot of Devin and I's conversation is not, is this a good wine? Very often it's a good wine, but is this a good wine for what people are going to be asked to pay for it? And I think that's honestly the conversation we have more often than not. It's very difficult these days to make a truly spectacularly bad wine. It happens. God knows it happens, but it's difficult. To make a good wine for a fair price is harder, and that's more what we focus on. Top of the grapes under $20. That'd be fun. Masterclass, I like the idea. Yeah, and you know what, Kaylee, I'm glad you feel the same way I do, because Riesling doesn't have to be sweet. We bring in and sell far more dry Riesling than we do sweet. I would say that in an average like 12-month gap, I sell more of this wine than all of our sweet Rieslings combined, because just dry Riesling is what we sell now, because this is what we want. This is what as North Americans we're comfortable with. And Riesling is just as happy making sweet Rieslings as dry Rieslings. It does the same thing. It's a great grape. It's my favorite grape. I'm glad you're kind of hanging out and finding that out too, because I love this. This is exactly what I like to drink. Karen, thank you very much. I enjoy doing these as well. Apothic does in fact work very, very hard, kind of like Dr. Frankenstein, sewing like 9 different things that don't belong together with the murderer's brain. And then they call it wine, even though it tastes like brains. Gas means crank it. Apparently more music, Aaron. More music. So yeah, I'm here for a few more questions. I think we've got through about what we wanted to get through. We got Canada coming next week. Aaron, anything else I forgot to cover? Oh, apparently yes, the Mother's Day promo. Yes, we are partnering with our friend Susie, who does these beautiful little succulent baskets. She is doing a floral basket. It's not succulents. It's a bunch of flowers, beautiful bunch of flowers. Includes orchids and roses and so many types of flowers I don't know the names of. And she's doing one of those, and then your choice of a red, a white, a rosé, or a sparkling delivered for $75 on either the Friday or Saturday before Mother's Day. This is one of our partnerships with another local business. We don't make a thing on the flowers. I just want to help out a friend, and a local business is struggling in these times. And Susie's just an absolute delight. I did an open house with her at her place when she launched a new location a bunch of months back. Lovely human. Yeah, we're just doing bottle of wine, your choice, red, white, rosé, sparkling, plus an absolutely gorgeous bouquet of flowers, $75 all in, delivered to wherever you'd like it. Lethbridge, Coaldale, Colehurst, let us know, and we'll deliver it either the Friday or Saturday before Mother's Day. Thank you for letting me know, Aaron. And I think, unless we get any more questions, I think we're going to wrap her up there. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Hand. Thank you, New Hope YQL Florist, for kicking us in with the flowers, and Aaron for reminding me that I did need to talk about that. Yeah, this is our German lineup. German wine, so much more than just the sweet. I love... Thank you, Hand. I see, he's more than just, drinking. I love German wine. This is the topic that I wanted to talk about, and the reason that I didn't want to have a guest speaker is I didn't think they'd get a word in, and I think I've probably been proved right. They wouldn't have gotten a single word in, because I can talk about Germany for days. This was the topic that I wanted to do right from the start, and thank you all for letting me be the biggest wine nerd that I can be to talk about my favorite topic. We'll be on to Canada next week. In the meantime, thank you all very much. Happy Friday, happy May Day, and enjoy your weekend. It's going to be beautiful out there. Thank you all very much. Cheers, and goodbye.